Welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane, where the takes have no lies, no bias, but most importantly, no shame. I'm your host, Shane Fordham, with all the shameless sports takes. Now, we're jumping straight into it. Of course, we are talking Eagles football. They've been active over this past week in free agency. It was a little alarming. Day one, a little quiet. Day two, little quiet, but is getting up there. We're getting a little more active, the deeper we get into this free agency window. Starting with one of the more recent free agency signings, one of the bigger names. The Eagles signed Hollywood Brown to a 1-year deal worth up to $6.5 million. This is a pretty big deal, especially in light of the AJ Brown trade rumors, adding more depth to that receiver room to, in light of, letting Jahan Dotson walk, so just kind of bolstering up that receiver room a little bit. Seems like it's preparing for the potential departure of AJ Brown. So this is a pretty significant move for the Eagles. Pretty significant move for the Eagles. Now, with that being said, looking at the Hollywood Brown signing, I do think in this specific system, Hollywood Brown is a downgrade from Jahan Dotson as opposed, in looking at last year. In this system, I think Hollywood Brown is a downgrade in comparison to Jahan Dotson, who the type of guy he was for us the past 2 seasons, because I think Jahan Dotson was capable of doing more in this offense than what I think Hollywood Brown is capable of doing in this offense. Like in terms of skill sets, abilities, ceilings. Like I think Jahan Dotson, I think Hollywood Brown is a downgrade from Jahan Dotson. Like looking at these two side by side, Hollywood Brown versus Jahan Dotson, I think Jahan Dotson has stronger hands. He's more physical. He has more of an ability to catch in traffic. He has more of an ability to win in those 50-50 ball situations, like what we saw him do in the Super Bowl, what we saw him do week 1 against the Cowboys. Just when we have seen Jahan Dotson actually be able to make plays, when he's actually had the ball thrown his way in this offense, we've seen him make some pretty impressive plays at that receiver spot. I don't see how Hollywood Brown isn't that type of guy. Hollywood Brown is all about speed and separation. He's not as physical. He's definitely not a guy who is going to make those 50-50 grabs, in those 50-50 catch situations. I think Jahan Dotson was more of an asset to a diverse, versatile Eagles offense than what Hollywood Brown is, based on skill set, range, overall ability. I don't see Hollywood Brown matching Jahan Dotson in terms of filling that receiver 3 role adequately. I don't see him matching up. I don't think it's a bad signing. I don't think signing Hollywood Brown was a bad signing at all. I see it as a bit of a downgrade in that receiver 3 spot than what we had for the past 2 seasons in Jahan Dotson. Like looking at Jahan Dotson and Hollywood Brown, I think Jahan Dotson was more of a schematic fit for this offense than Hollywood Brown. I think he was more of a schematic fit. Like looking at this offense, the way it's laid out right now, you have 2 deep threats, 2 receiver ones in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. You have like if you look at Dotson was a guy that could be a deep threat as well, but he was also a guy that could be more of a janitor, that could make more of those cleanup plays, those crucial, dirty plays on like 3rd down, 4th down, needed plays to get that first down to keep the drive alive. Like Hollywood Brown, he's a guy that can be a deep threat, make those flashy plays downfield, but he's not a janitor type of guy. He's not a guy that is going to be able to make those gritty catches, those catches in traffic on, 3rd down, whether it's 3rd and long, 3rd and short, 4th down, like it's like those gotta have it plays in those gotta have it situations. Like I don't see Hollywood Brown filling up that cleanup role, that janitor role that Jahan Dotson was able to fill, playing alongside guys like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like if you have 2 stallions like AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, 2 guys that can just go get it, just create when the ball is in their hands, that can make catches at every level of the field, especially in deep coverage. You need a guy that can thrive in traffic when we're talking like midfield, short yardage. You need that type of guy. that sort of plug and play type of guy. Hollywood Brown isn't really that guy. He's a guy that can stretch the field, that can be a deep threat, make plays downfield, but he is not a guy that can make those gritty plays like what Jahan Dotson was able to make over the past 2 seasons with the Eagles. So I think Jahan Dotson was more of a schematic fit for this Eagles offense than what Hollywood Brown will be, going into this 2027 season. And honestly, looking at Hollywood Brown and Jahan Dotson, like in the event that AJ Brown is traded, like in a scenario where AJ Brown is traded tomorrow, a receiver duo with Devontae Smith and Jahan Dotson, to me, is more lethal than a receiver duo with Smitty and Hollywood Brown. A receiver duo with Smitty and Jahan Dotson is more lethal to me than a receiver duo with Smitty and Hollywood Brown, because I think Jahan Dotson, obviously, just like I said before, is more of a complement to the receivers he's playing alongside of, like Smitty, than the complement that Hollywood Brown would be able to offer to a receiver like Smitty. Like, because Jahan Dotson can do, I think, more things than what Hollywood Brown is able to do. He can do a variety of different things that serve as that make him a better complementary piece to a bona fide receiver one, like Devontae Smith and even AJ Brown, of course. I don't think Hollywood Brown has as deep of a skill set, as much of a range to his game, in comparison to Jahan Dotson when playing alongside receivers like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. Like, I don't see like Jahan Dotson is a guy that can make the gritty plays, he's a guy that can be a deep threat, make the big plays downfield, but that can also make the gritty plays, short yardage, middle of the field type of plays in traffic, catching through contact, winning those 50-50 ball situations. I don't see Hollywood Brown doing that. Hollywood Brown is a deep threat who has also shown the ability to make those plays down the field. I don't see him making the gritty catches, the gritty plays, in those real situational football moments like what we've seen Jahan Dotson be able to make over the past 2 years. So if Howie Roseman signed Hollywood Brown in the event of preparing for an AJ Brown departure, like to sort of help fill that void that would be left by AJ Brown alongside Devontae Smith, I don't think it was the best signing. I don't think Hollywood Brown is filling that void. I don't think, so like I would have felt more in that regard, I would have felt more comfortable just paying Jahan Dotson, re-signing Jahan Dotson, as opposed to saving money and bringing in Hollywood Brown. Like, if you really think AJ Brown is going to leave, I think it's worth investing more money into Jahan Dotson, a receiver who does have sort of a higher ceiling, who is still sort of on the younger side, has less mileage on his legs as well, less mileage on his tires as well, less wear and tear on his tires, as opposed to bringing in a guy who is more of a one-trick pony when in Hollywood Brown in comparison to Jahan Dotson. Like, that's just me. Like, in the event AJ Brown gets traded tomorrow, I would feel more comfortable if my receiver duo was Smitty and Jahan Dotson, as opposed to my receiver duo being Smitty and Hollywood Brown. Like, maybe if this was 4 years ago, if we were talking like Baltimore Ravens, Hollywood Brown, I would feel differently. Maybe. But just like with the current versions of the players right now going into 2027, that's what I would feel more comfortable with, is that receiver duo. Now, with that being said, Hollywood Brown is still an asset. Like, even though I don't think Hollywood Brown is in for a breakout year, I don't think he offers the offense as much as what Jahan Dotson offered us over the past 2 seasons. He's still an asset. He's still a receiver that can stretch the field with the speed. Still a guy that can be a deep threat. He's still a guy that can be a 600 to 700 yard receiver if he gets the ball enough, if he gets the targets. I don't see him having a breakout year. Like, Hollywood Brown is an asset for sure. Signing Hollywood Brown in was a good signing. Hollywood Brown is still an asset. He's a guy that can be a deep threat. He's capable of making those flashy plays down the field, capable of stretching the field with his speed. He can even be a receiver that maybe you can get in space because of his speed, get him out in space on a screen, tunnel screen, bubble screen, kind of just let him create, getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage, jet sweep type of deal. I don't see him having a breakout year just because he's an Eagle. Like, I don't see him having a breakout year just because his quarterback is a Super Bowl MVP, just because he's playing with two or what could possibly be one of the more reliable receivers in the league behind with one of the best O-lines in the league. Like, even though Hollywood Brown is an asset, I don't see him having a breakout year because the Eagles have not shown capable yet of spreading the ball around, spreading the love around to all of its weapons. Like, there's no way Hollywood Brown is in for a breakout year when the Eagles still need to focus on making sure A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are involved. Like, Hollywood Brown is still an asset. Hollywood Brown, I think, is still an asset capable of, stretching the field with the speed, still capable of making those big plays down the field. From what we've seen, still capable of possibly creating, if he's creating an open field with some space because of his speed. I don't think he is in for a breakout year, though. There's no way he can be in for a breakout year when the Eagles are still trying to focus on making sure A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are involved in the offense. That's step one. That's the priority. There's no way Hollywood Brown is going to have a career year as a receiver 3 for the Eagles when the focus still needs to be on making sure A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith get their targets, get their touches. There's no way. Like, I don't. It's very unlikely that Hollywood Brown is gonna come in and make this immediate huge splash for this offense. Just with what he's able to bring, when he's most likely not going to get targets. Like, he's most likely going to be underutilized the same way Jahan Dotson was underutilized during his time in Philly. When the priority should be and needs to be making sure that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith get their targets, while also still feeding Saquon Barkley and still feeding Tank Bigsby at an appropriate rate. There's no way Hollywood Brown is going to come in and make this huge splash, have this huge impact on this offense when we have multiple other guys that we need to make sure are involved way more than they were last year, that we need to make sure are able to contribute to a more sustainable rhythm to this offense than what we saw last year. So there's no way there's no way I expect Hollywood Brown to come in and just have a breakout year as our receiver 3. Like, it's going to look very similar. I think it's very likely that it'll look like his role will look very similar to what Jahan Dotson's role in this offense, which was being a guy who is talented, who does have skill, but is going to be underutilized because of the scheme and the players that are in this unit. It's very likely. Like, I do think Hollywood Brown is a good depth piece. He's a good depth piece, but honestly, I would rather see Darius Cooper. Like, I would rather see Darius Cooper start at receiver 3 than Hollywood Brown, because I think, honestly, Darius Cooper even presents more of a compliment to the talent that we have on this offense, especially in our receivers, in that receiver room with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Like, if I'm looking at Hollywood Brown and Darius Cooper side by side, I would feel more comfortable with Darius Cooper being out there because of what he brings to the offense. Like, if we're looking at those two side by side, Darius Cooper is more of a bigger bodied receiver. He's more physical. He's more physical at the catch point. He's a guy that I think plays more comfortably in that sort of janitor cleanup role, playing alongside or playing behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith than what I think Hollywood Brown would be capable of doing in this coming season. Like, I think Darius Cooper is a far better schematic fit for this offense than Hollywood Brown, because of what he has shown his natural play style to be. Being that more gritty receiver, that more physical receiver, that like a guy who would be more a guy who could make those crucial plays on third down, on fourth down, those gotta have it situations. I would honestly rather see Darius Cooper fill that receiver 3 spot than Hollywood Brown. Like, and if I'm looking at Hollywood Brown and Darius, like, it's honestly, like, I don't think just because we signed Hollywood Brown that he's got that receiver 3 spot on lock. Like, I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think Hollywood Brown has that receiver 3 spot on lock at all because Darius Cooper is still in the squad. Like, it's definitely going to be a battle. Like, that's definitely going to be a competition come training camp between Hollywood Brown and Darius Cooper, because Darius Cooper, I think, is more of a compliment to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith than what Hollywood Brown is. Just based on skill set, based on play style, based on build as well. Like, I think Darius Cooper is more of a compliment to this offense than Hollywood Brown. Like, I think Darius Cooper would be able to fill that sort of cleanup role, that janitor role at the receiver 3 spot, being able to make those gritty plays, those sort of cleanup plays behind the flash of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, as opposed to Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown isn't that type of receiver. Like, looking at Hollywood Brown and Darius Cooper side by side, Darius Cooper is more of a bigger bodied receiver. He's shown to be more physical at the catch point, being able to do sort of more things than Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is more of a flashy, deep threat type of guy, speed, separation. We already have that in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. We need a guy who can make those intermediate, short yardage, midfield type of plays like what Darius Cooper has shown the potential to be able to do. So, like, honestly, that's the guy I would rather see at receiver 3 is Darius Cooper as opposed to Hollywood Brown. And honestly, looking at those two side by side and like looking at this receiver 3 battle between Hollywood Brown and Darius Cooper, I would rather see Darius Cooper at receiver 3 because even though Hollywood Brown may have a higher ceiling, based on what we've seen in his career, I think Darius Cooper has a higher floor. Darius Cooper definitely has a higher floor than Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is shown capable of making those flashy plays downfield, being a pretty dangerous deep threat. But I think Darius Cooper, based on his play style, based on what we have seen from him so far in preseason, in camp, I think Darius Cooper is more likely to be more consistent than Hollywood Brown based on his play style, because I think it's because of his blend of physicality, his blend of his knack for short yardage success. I think Darius Cooper is more likely to be consistent than Hollywood Brown. I would take consistency over flash any day of the week. Hollywood Brown is flashy. He can be a flashy type of receiver downfield, making pretty plays down the field. But Darius Cooper, I think, is a receiver that can get his hands dirty and give us those gotta-have-it plays when defenses are keying in on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith downfield. When they send an extra DB over top, cover 3, cover 4, sort of blanket coverage to make sure all the bases are covered, to make sure that it's not A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith who kills them. I think Darius Cooper can fill that role more. I think Darius Cooper would have a better chance of filling that role than Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown is flashy, but I think Darius Cooper can be more consistent. And I would take consistency over flash any day of the week, especially when it comes to that receiver 3 position for this unit specifically, 100%. So I think Hollywood Brown has a higher a higher ceiling, but I think Darius Cooper has a higher floor, which to me is more important considering the elite talent that we already have on this offense. So I would rather see Darius Cooper at that number 3 spot than Hollywood Brown. But speaking of signings, another signing that the Eagles made over this week was DG. Dallas Goedert is back in the building. Dallas Goedert, aka DG, aka 88 killer, aka one of the top tight ends in the game right now. Eagles re-signed Dallas Goedert on a 1-year deal worth up to $7 million. Now, re-signing Dallas Goedert was a must. That was a must. There was no way the Eagles should not have re-signed Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert earned his money and then some. Dallas Goedert not only earned his money, he definitely deserves more money than what the Eagles were able to pay him. So he not only earned his money, he's a top 5 tight end in the game. He's the touchdowns leader for the Eagles this past season. He was the Eagles' #1 red zone threat. Like, we're talking shovel passes, RPOs, screens, play actions. Like, Dallas Goedert makes all of those things more dangerous, more lethal for this Eagles offense, especially in the red zone. Like, he's tied for first in touchdowns amongst all tight ends in the NFL. We're talking like we're talking an elite weapon to use in situational football, 2-minute drill situations. Like, he was the most consistent target for Jalen Hurts in this offense last year. Most consistent in terms of production, in terms of usage, in terms of targets. Like, DG was the most consistent target for Jalen Hurts in this offense last year. Like, so re-signing Dallas Goedert was a must for this Eagles team 100%. It was a must. Like, there's no way we would have been in as good a shape, especially amid the AJ Brown trade rumors, if the Eagles were to have let DG walk. Now, we definitely needed DG. Like, DG being willing to take a pay cut definitely made that possible. But the Eagles at least being willing to offer what they offered, there's no way they couldn't have at least offered what they offered, considering how vital, how valuable DG was to this offense this past season. There's no way. But honestly, like, in the Eagles signing Dallas Goedert, what that does tell me is that an AJ Brown trade is more likely and more possible. It's more likely and more possible. Like, there's no way you lose AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert in the same offseason. like, there's no way. Howie Roseman would never let that happen. Like, there's no way you could let that happen, losing two of our best threats usage-wise walk in the same offseason, or see depart in the same offseason, rather. There's no way. Because I honestly don't know. Like, I don't know what an offense for the Eagles would look like at that point in the event of an A.J. Brown trade. Like, if you let Dallas Goedert walk and trade A.J. Brown, I don't know what that offense looks like. Like, that moves Devontae Smith up to receiver 1, obviously. That's not bad. That's not a bad situation to be in. But you now have Hollywood Brown at your receiver 2 spot, most likely. You have Darius Cooper at your number 3 spot, most likely. You have Grant Calcaterra at your starting tight end spot, most likely. Like, other than Devontae Smith, those are 3 players that we are not sure what exactly they would look like in that role. We are not sure exactly what they would look like with that rate of increased targets, with that sort of promotion or an enhancement of a role. Like, aside from Devontae Smith, like, there's no telling what those 3 spots would look like in terms of Hollywood Brown at receiver 2 or receiver 3, Darius Cooper at receiver 2 or receiver 3, Grant Calcaterra at that starting tight end spot. Like, there's no telling what this offensive unit could look like with that personnel in those positions. Like, so losing Dallas Goedert and AJ Brown in the same offseason was just not an option. So without Dallas Goedert, if we were to let Dallas Goedert walk and let AJ Brown and pursue actually follow through on, one of these trade offers with AJ Brown, I don't know what this unit would look like in terms of production. Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know. So there was no way you could not re-sign Dallas Goedert amid the AJ Brown trade rumors, amid the offers that that the Eagles have been fielding from other teams. So if there's one thing that this move of re-signing Dallas Goedert tells me, is that an AJ Brown trade is more likely and more possible. It's more likely that it'll happen, but it's also more possible for the Eagles to make happen, because we would still be retaining some proven talent in the offense. We would still be retaining some playmakers, some guys who can be threatening to a defense in-house. So it definitely makes it more likely, more possible. But honestly, Dallas Goedert deserves way more money than $7 million. definitely deserves more money. Like, we are talking about an elite tight end, a top 5 tight end in the National Football League, arguably the best tight end this past season, being tied for the most touchdowns in that respective position. Like, there's no way Dallas Goedert didn't deserve more money off of after the year that he just had in 2026. There's no way. Like, Dallas Goedert willingly took a pay cut, willingly took $7 million just to be an Eagle. Just to be an Eagle. He just did that for the love of the game, for the love of the city. For the love of the game and the love of the city. Like, there's no way Dallas Goedert didn't deserve more money. Like, the Commanders gave Chigo Okonkwo like $7 million as a signing bonus. Like, that was a signing bonus for Chigo Okonkwo, a tight end who was younger and much more unproven than Dallas Goedert, a top 5, bona fide top 5 tight end in the NFL. So if Chig on one hand is getting $7 million just as a signing bonus, just for signing, just putting the pen to paper, there's no way Dallas Goedert didn't deserve way more than what the Eagles offered him. Way more. There's no way. Dallas Goedert not only deserves more money, but for that alone, DG honestly deserves a ring. DG honestly deserves a ring. Like, Dallas Goedert, coming off of the season that he had in 2026, leading the Eagles in receiving touchdowns, being tied for most receiving touchdowns amongst all NFL tight ends, leading all NFL tight ends in catch rate, like in catch success, like being the Eagles' #1 red zone threat this past year. In any form or fashion, whether it was screens, RPOs, just straight up routing a DB, just straight up routing a coverage for a tutty. Coming off the year he had last year, the talent that Dallas Goedert is, Dallas Goedert definitely deserves a ring. He definitely deserves a ring. Not only coming off the year he had, but taking the pay cut that he did, because Dallas Goedert didn't need to take a pay cut. He could have accepted the highest offer available, like what we've seen other guys do who have left the Eagles. Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, like Javon Hargrave. Like, he could have Milton Williams. Like, he could have taken bigger deals, more money, more lucrative deals, and played somewhere else, but chose to take less money just so he could stay in the building, just so he could stay in Philly. Dallas Goedert arguably deserves a ring more than any other Eagle on the roster right now. Dallas Goedert arguably deserves a ring more than any other Eagle on the roster because of his ability to produce, because of his ability to remain consistent, his consistency, because of his selflessness. Like, Dallas Goedert deserves a ring 100%. Dallas Goedert deserves a ring arguably more than anyone else in the Eagles building, in the Eagles facility. It's him and Vic Fangio, honestly, that are tied for #1. Him and Vic Fangio, in my opinion. Those two guys deserve rings arguably more than anyone else in that building going into 2027. 100%. So, re-signing Dallas Goedert, huge move for the Eagles, huge plus. Some other pretty interesting moves are the Eagles signing Dameon Pierce and Andy Dalton. Well, signing Dameon Pierce, acquiring Andy Dalton. But the Eagles just recently signed Dameon Pierce to a 1-year deal. And honestly, I think we have a competition at running back 2 spot right now. That RB2 spot is up for grabs between Tank Bigsby and Dameon Pierce. Like, I know Tank Bigsby was a beast last year in terms of what we were actually able to see him do. Definitely a guy that shows promise, can definitely be one of the better RB2s in the NFL. But let's not forget, Dameon Pierce is a dog. Dameon Pierce got some dog in him. Like, let's not forget, Dameon Pierce in 2022, his rookie year, was a borderline 1,000-yard running back. Year one. Now, let's remember, Dameon Pierce did not lose a step. He did not get worse. Dameon Pierce was honestly a victim of scheme and coaching change. He was a victim of scheme and coaching change. Like, if we remember, Dameon Pierce in 2022 under under Pep Hamilton in 2022, his best season so far his rookie year, 939 yards, 220 carries, workhorse. The next year, 2023 and 2024, under Bobby Slowick, new offensive coordinator, in the year of CJ Stroud, his production decreases. CJ Stroud, obviously, the Texans were more of a passing offense. You know, they bring in Devin Singletary, who is a pass catching running back who takes the haul away from Dameon Pierce. So Dameon Pierce drops in production. He drops from 220 carries in 2022, decreasing to 140 carries in 2023, to then 40 carries in 2024. Then under Nick Caley this year in 2025, they bring in Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb, two bona fide workhorses. That obviously drops Dameon Pierce's usage rate even more. So, like, Dameon Pierce isn't a guy who just gradually got worse over time. He just was a victim of coaching change and scheme. Coaching change and scheme. Like, the Texans became more of a pass-first offense with CJ Stroud having a franchise quarterback, having, some guys who shined in that receiver room like Nico Collins and Tank Dell. They also have a little swap in OCs. Bobby Slowick comes in, Nick Caley comes in. But then they also bring in two bona fide workhorses and Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb together. So, like, Dameon Pierce is definitely a dog. Dameon Pierce is definitely a guy that can still contribute to a running back, to a run game by committee. He's definitely a guy that can contribute to a run game by committee. Like, I definitely think this RB2, I definitely think we're going to see a position battle for RB2 between Tank Bigsby and Dameon Pierce, because we obviously know what Tank Bigsby is capable of. We obviously know what Tank Bigsby is capable of with more carries. But honestly, Dameon Pierce with more carries in this type of scheme could potentially be another guy that could be another workhorse alongside Saquon Barkley for the Eagles. Like, this is honestly going to be a position battle to look out for in training camp because of what both of these guys are capable of. The flashes that we have seen from both of these guys. So I definitely think Dameon Pierce was a good signing. But it honestly, whether it's Dameon Pierce or Tank Bigsby, like, whichever one, earns that RB2 spot after camp, if the offensive scheme goes anything like how it went last year, it's not going to matter because they're not going to see the field. They're not going to see the ball. Like, if the offense is run anywhere close to how it was run last year, neither one of these guys are going to see the field based on how we saw Tank Bigsby was used, underutilized in the offense. Like, Tank Bigsby, in all of his time in Philly, he had 18 total carries while averaging 9 yards per carry. 18 total carries. Several games, multiple games as an Eagle, only 18 total carries. This guy was averaging, we're talking about a guy that was averaging 9 yards per carry. Only 18 total carries. So if the offense is run anywhere close to how it was run last year under Kevin Patullo, it doesn't matter who gets that RB2 spot between Tank or Dameon Pierce, because neither one are going to see the field. Neither one are going to see the field. Neither one are going to get carries. So it really may not even matter at that point who is RB2, because we may not even see him. We may not even see him for the first half of the season, which is honestly sad. But another signing the Eagles made, Andy Dalton, or trading Andy Dalton, trading for Andy Dalton with the Panthers. The Eagles acquire one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. The Eagles acquired one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL in Andy Dalton. This is the guy who took Bryce Young's spot for a good chunk of the season last year. This is a guy who was actually winning games with the Panthers, putting the Panthers in a position to win games as a starting quarterback, as a guy who had stepped up into that starting role. So Andy Dalton coming in definitely gives me faith, God forbid, in the event that something happens to Jalen Hurts where he needs to take a game off, something happens, Andy Dalton still gives the Eagles a winning chance in game. Like, Andy Dalton is a backup quarterback that still gives the Eagles a winning chance, still the ability to compete in the event that he needs to come in for a Jalen Hurts who's unable to play for whatever reason. But that's all we got for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. And I will be back later on with more shameless takes.